Hey. Hey, thanks for letting me come over in the last minute. I could really use the help.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to help. Where should we get started?
From the beginning, I haven't studied and I'm really confused. What's an oak apple gall? Is it actually a fruit?
So the oak apple gall is actually a structure that develops on oak trees, specifically red, black, and scarlet oaks, after a female wasp oviposits or lays her eggs on the branches of an oak tree. They're produced by the wasp superfamily Cynipid. It's mainly there to protect the wasp larva as it develops while providing it with a safe and nutritious environment. Galls may reduce the growth of affected areas of the tree, but generally they're not harmful to the overall health. Heavy infestations may cause the tree to lose leaves prematurely.
Okay, so it's not a fruit.
No, it's not, and please don't eat one. They have the wasp larva developing inside.
Ugh, gross.
It's called an apple gall because it looks kind of like an apple with similar textures inside. Here, let me show you. This is what a cross-section of an oak gall looks like. This is the monocular, meaning it houses one larval chamber in the center, but there can also be multi-ocular galls with multiple larval chambers.
But what is the gall made of? Obviously the structure is different from leaves, but is the cellular composition the same?
Yeah, the gall structure consists of a larval chamber with two types of nutritive cells, the inner nutritive cells and the nutritive parenchyma. The inner nutritive cells are low in starch and high in lipids and proteins, whereas the nutritive parenchyma cells are high in starch and low in lipids and proteins. The grazing of larvae on nutritive parenchyma transforms nutritive parenchyma cells into inner nutritive cells. These are responsible for lipid production and become nutrients for larva development.
So as the larva eats the nutritive parenchyma cell replace them?
Yeah, that way the larva has access to food all the time.
Interesting, but how is the gall even made in the first place?
That's a great question. To induce growth and formation of galls, the female lays her eggs onto meristematic tissue.
Sorry, can you remind me what meristematic tissue is again?
Of course. So meristematic tissue contains undifferentiated cells that are capable of dividing into various types of plant cells.
I see.
It's important too that the female lays her eggs on the meristematic tissue because a gall can't be induced on differentiated cell tissue because those tissues are already committed to being a leaf or a branch.
How did the wasp signal the plant to make a new gall?
So the larva basically reprograms the plant development by mimicking plant hormones to induce pathways not normally occurring in oak, stem, and leaf tissues. We don't know of the specific signaling compounds that are secreted by the wasp, but we do know that something must be secreted because when a larva dies, gall development stops. This tells us there must be continuous secretion of some chemical that induces gall formation and development.
But where do these secretions come from?
So initially they come from the mother wasp as she oviposits her egg onto the meristematic tissue, but once inside the gall, scientists think the secretions come from the larva's salivary glands.
What chemicals are in these secretions?
Oak chitinases, auxin, BCCP, and enod. Auxin is expressed early during growth. It's a phytohormone that promotes tissue proliferation and growth of the gall. BCCP is expressed early and during growth stages. It aids in lipid metabolism and growth of the nutritive tissues. Enod is expressed throughout development, and typically it's used for formation of root nodules which house rhizobia and do nitrogen fixation. In this case, it's thought to contribute to the formation of the structure of the gall. Oak chitinases are present all throughout development to help the gall defend against fungal pathogens.
You just said something about the early stage. Are there any other stages?
Yeah, there's three actually. It's early, growth, and maturation. During the early stage, the gall wasp larva hatches from the egg and the surrounding plant cells differentiate to form a hard chamber surrounded by the nutritive tissue.
So the larva is basically using the gall as a second stage, so it has protection and can keep growing and feeding?
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. And after the early stage, the gall enters the growth phase, which takes 3 to 6 weeks. Inside the gall, nutritive cells multiply and enlarge, becoming multicellular and accumulating high concentrations of lipids, carbohydrates, and nitrogenous compounds. Outside the nutritive core, gall growth proceeds rapidly by hyperplasia and hypertrophy of layers of parenchyma. Excessive development of vascular tissue occurs, which imports nutrients and water from the host plant.
What happens to the larva inside after the growth phase?
So the larva grows rapidly until the exhaustion of nutritive tissues when they reach the surrounding sclerenchyma layer. Tissues outside the larval chamber become lignified and desiccated. Pupation of the larva occurs and adults emerge 2 to 3 weeks later. In this final stage, the gall reaches its full size and cells in the meristem stop dividing. The gall tissues mature and become specialized to perform their functions such as providing a protective barrier, producing nutrients, or housing the attacking organism. The gall may remain on the plant for the rest of its life or eventually fall off.
Also, I heard my professor say that they had an alternation of generation life cycle, but I thought it was only in plants.
The oak apple gall wasp life cycle involves an obligate alteration between sexual and asexual generations, where each generation will induce a gall. The life cycle of the wasp begins underground in the roots of the oak. Here, wasp larvae hatch, develop into pupae, and as wingless adult females emerge from the pupae. In spring of the second year of the life cycle, the female adult wasps emerge from the ground and climb up the oak tree to the leaves. Then, they inject an egg into the veins of a newly growing leaf, and the gall begins to form. In the second generation, the females that emerge from the gall mate and drop to the ground to lay eggs in the oak roots, producing further galls.
Wait, why do they inject an egg in the veins of the leaf?
Glad you asked. Injecting the egg into the veins of the leaf allows the developing gall to receive the nutrients and hormones it needs to grow. Once it's formed, the larva feeds on the gall's tissue, providing its offspring with a nutrient-rich environment. When the larva reaches the right size, it turns into a pupa and then finally an adult wasp. The adult wasp exits the gall by making a hole, and the gall turns brown and sometimes drops to the ground.
And what time of the year does this actually occur?
These galls can be found between May and June, where the female has laid her eggs in the leaf bud. Adults emerge in June and July.
And what happens to the gall after the larvae leaves?
The empty galls provide a habitat for other small creatures like spiders, facilitating the development of arthropod communities in oak trees. There's also beetle and wasp species which use the empty gall as a place to lay their eggs, as well as scavenger ants, lacewing larvae, and other small predatory wasps. Eventually, the galls fall to the ground where they become an important nutrient source for the surrounding plants as they decompose or are scavenged by birds and rodents which consume the gall for its protein and nutrients.
Are there any instances where the wasp doesn't emerge?
Yeah, so parasitoid wasps can also lay their eggs in the gall, and they feed on the gall wasps. There are also other species of insects that feed on the gall themselves.
Okay, so to recap everything, the oak apple gall develops because the wasp lays her egg onto the meristematic tissue, and the oak tree responds by producing a gall to house and feed the larvae.
You got it.
Oh, you're a lifesaver. Thank you so much.
No problem. Good luck on the test.